Hello everyone. We'll begin with the refuge prayers, enlightened mind, and the
Chödrak Soki Chonam Chanchu Patu Dani Kapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gi Pesanam Ki Dola Penchir Sangye Drupa Shu Sangye Chödrak Soki Chonam Chanchu Patu Dani Kapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gi Pesanam Ki Dola Penchir Sangye Drupa Shu Sangye Chödrak Soki Chonam Chanchu Patu Dani Kapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gi Pesanam Ki Dola Penchir Sangye Drupa Shu Semchen Tamshe Dewa Tang Kyutan Denpa Gyochi Tunel Tan Dunel Gi Kyutan Delwa Gyochi Tunel Mepe Dewa Tamba Minelwa Gyochi Rinchadan Delwe Tanyam Chempo Lane Bagyochi Pelden Sawe Lama Rinpoche Dagi Chiwa Peme Denchula Kadrin Chenpe Gone Jeksungte Kusung Tuking a Drup Sel Tu Sel Chomden de Jambe Yon La Chak Selu Gongi Lo Che Dimni Tin Netanam Da Krab Selwe Jinye Dungu Shishi Sishi Niki Tuka Lek Bamzim Gangdak Si Pet Senra Mari Muntum Dunel Gisiwe Dotso Kun La Buche Datse Yella Duchu Densum Dota Chedon Yemon Ilon Leke Chando Jose Jing Marik Munsa Tourna Nyogu Chinye Chazer Dridam Dene Dachi Sachi Tasa Niente Luzo Galse Tuweku Chuda Chudan Chunigen Dakle Musa Jambe Yang La Du Seden Keki Kenra Beserki Dakle Timu Mun Paramsel Katan Tenshu Shulu Topai Loche Pape Nan Watzel Tusa. Donc dans ce
in this fourth theme, that's part of the first main part of the entry to the state of a Pandita, this chapter entitled Dependent Arising. We begin with a summarized presentation of the subject, then a detailed presentation. The third part will be the use and conclusion. We're currently in the summarized presentation of the subject of dependent arising. To explain this, Khenpo Rinpoche offered a presentation in 5 points. The first, the 2 types of dependent arising, then an introduction to non-Buddhist schools of thought. Then we looked at what a school of thought is. Then we looked at Buddhist schools of thought and their characteristics. And now we're looking at the 5th point, where the non-Buddhist schools of thought and their characteristics are laid out. Within this 5th point, we looked at the annihilist schools of thought, those who hold that phenomena appear without cause. Now we come to the second part that explains the eternalist schools of thought. These eternalist schools of thought affirm a cause that is not a cause. In these eternalist schools of thought, we first find those who explain that a creator God created the world and its inhabitants, and that it exists separately from these creations. Then the second category is those who affirm an inner creator agent. Within this point, we looked at the Samkhya school of thought. They hold that the inner creator is Prakriti, and then yesterday, at the end of the session, we started going over the Jain school of thought. For this school, we saw that the inner creator agent is actions. We reached the point where Khenpo Rinpoche explained, in relation to the Jain school, the founders and masters of the Jain school. What he said on this subject is that in the Jain tradition, there are 24 enlightened masters who will lay out this tradition in the world in their own time. These 24 enlightened masters will appear over time on this earth. It's a bit like in Buddhism, we talk about the 1,000 Buddhas who will teach Buddhism on this earth or within this kalpa. In the Jain tradition, it's somewhat similar, with 24 enlightened masters who within this kalpa on this earth will lay out the Jain tradition over time. The present master of this school of thought is named Man of Great Courage. This enlightened master appeared in the world prior to Buddha Shakyamuni. They met, though, and became friends. He appeared somewhat before Shakyamuni Buddha, but was more or less among the Buddha's contemporaries. They met and became friends. The Jain school has a very rigorous ethical conduct. The view of Jainism is abandoning all form of violence or harm. In other words, giving up any action that will create suffering for other beings, directly or indirectly. Their ethical code is very strict. A practitioner of this tradition who has completely renounced the world, even if they are in the countryside where there's no one around and they're thirsty, they won't drink water from the river without knowing who the land that the river is passing through belongs to. They will first ask the owner of the land before drinking the water. If they don't ask permission, it's considered to be theft in Jainism. The Jain believes that by avoiding negative actions and by adhering to a code of conduct, strictly to the letter, that they will be able to purify their conduct and attain liberation. Buddhism does not criticize this strict conduct of the Jains that was just explained. Indeed, for Buddhism, they are excellent examples of ethical conduct. There are no flaws. Khenpo will then explain how they are excellent examples. They are an excellent example of ethics. Their conduct influenced many Hindu traditions. They are also an example of kindness, benevolence. They avoid creating suffering. They are an example of non-violence. The Jain tradition is never aggressive toward other traditions. And they are an example of renunciation of the world. And Khenpo adds that the fact that it's quite easy to be vegetarian in India is thanks to the Jain. They originated vegetarianism in India. In this tradition, monastic ordination is very important. They distinguish two groups of monastic ordination. And there are those who wear clothes and those who do not wear any clothes. Yesterday we talked about the nude ones. There are two traditions among the Jain. Now we'll explain the reasons why certain individuals do not wear clothes. They don't wear clothes because the primary principle of this tradition is abandoning any act that will create or inflict suffering on sentient beings. This group of practitioners who do not wear clothes, who took on this particular monastic ordination, do not wear clothes. There is a reason for this, because this can kill many insects during the cultivation of plants that are used to produce cotton, for example. Khenpo gives the example of plowing a field. Whether this concerns monks or nuns, both commit to this conduct. Additionally, when they eat and drink, they don't use utensils. They eat and drink with their hands. Because, in the same way, when we fabricate tools, utensils, such as cups, spoons, etc., plates, many beings are killed. In order to not cause suffering for these beings, they never use such utensils. For these monastic individuals who have renounced everything, when it comes to their food, they will only eat food that has been offered by a benefactor. Even if a Jain practitioner is very hungry, after having spent a great deal of time meditating in a distant region, if they find food on the side of the road, they won't take it. A Jain prefers to die of hunger rather than to take food left on the side of the road. This is their way of applying their very strict code of ethics. And to continue with food, they only eat once a day at lunchtime. They don't eat breakfast or dinner. This tradition spread widely throughout India and is still popular today. And then we come to the second group, the second monastic group within the Jain school, those who wear clothes. Those who wear clothes, this is another monastic group who simply wears white clothing. They have a single set of clothes, not two or three, but a single set of clothes. Practitioners in this tradition take great care with their ethical code and apply it very seriously. No excuse allows them to do something different other than what is explained in the code. Today we still find many convents and monasteries where there are monks and nuns in this tradition. In their temples, they have large statues of the founder, a man of great courage. In India, this tradition still counts many adepts today. Most wealthy Indian people belong to this tradition. The benefactors of this tradition are not necessarily monastic practitioners, but as disciples of the tradition, they practice generosity very seriously. Furthermore, around these Jain monasteries, we find many poor people, beggars, because the disciples of the tradition feed them well. For example, there are many Tibetans in exile in India who live and practice near the Jain monasteries because it's very easy to find food there. The Tibetans in exile, in this case, don't need to look for benefactors. They simply remain close to a Jain monastery and then they are nourished, fed. Thus, they can spend their time in meditation. They spend their time meditating rather than contacting people and seeking benefactors in order to survive. Jain monks and nuns have truly renounced the world, which Khenpo Rinpoche says is not always true in other traditions. Jain monks and nuns are true monks, true nuns. They have truly renounced the world, which, as Khenpo said and said again, is not always the case in other traditions. Now we'll look at the points of disagreement between Buddhism and Jainism. According to Buddha Shakyamuni's doctrine, their point of view on the origin of the world and its inhabitants are mistaken because they consider actions, karma, to be truly existing and to be a creator agent. Due to the fact that this school accepts the functioning of an agent, a creator agent, actions, this school is included in the category of schools of thoughts that affirm the existence of a creator agent, even if this creator agent is not a god, creator god. This is why, for Buddhism, the Jain are among the schools of thought who affirm that phenomena are born from an incorrect cause. And additionally, the Jain also adopt the idea of a truly existing self of the individual. This point of view was also refuted by Buddhists, as well as the idea that trees and plants are sentient beings. Yesterday, Olivier stated that the Jain consider trees and plants to be sentient beings. Khenpo adds that, of course, it is a tradition that strictly adheres to an ethical code, but this will not lead them to liberation. And lastly, among schools who affirm a creator agent, there are those who affirm an outer creator agent. Oh, sorry. So that concluded the Jain. And moving on, among non-Buddhist schools who affirm an outer creator agent, there are those who affirm that this outer creator agent is a god. Among the various Hindu traditions, many affirm the existence of an outer creator god. In Buddhism, according to Buddhism, this is a mistaken point of view. A creator god cannot be the origin of the world and its inhabitants. We have now concluded the explanations of all of these non-Buddhist schools of thought. We saw that from a Buddhist point of view, according to the principle of dependent arising, outer and inner phenomena appeared neither without a cause, as is the annihilist view of the Sharvaka, nor from a cause, which is not a cause from a Buddhist point of view, and that is the point of view of the eternalist schools of thought, that phenomena appear from a cause. As we saw for the Samkhya, and there was an outer cause. Oh wait, what? Okay, it's a cause, but it's not the creator, and then there's the inner cause of Purusha. And then we also saw the Jain, who affirm an outer creator agent, which is actions, and also those who affirm an outer creator agent that is a god. So that concludes non-Buddhist schools, and now we may have a question. If phenomena do not appear without a cause, nor from a cause that is not a cause, how do they appear? And if you look at the sheet with the root text, it says, inner and outer phenomena did not appear without cause. Nope, that's not the right line. They were born based on the coming together of their respective causes and conditions, which themselves are dependently arisen. This is what is called dependent arising. It's in the first paragraph, the third sentence. Therefore, there is a process of dependent arising, a chain of events where specific causes and conditions produce specific effects. This process is a process of dependent arising, where each cause and condition must be present for the process to take place. If one of the causes and conditions is not present, if all of the causes and conditions are not present, then the process cannot occur. Things cannot manifest. Therefore, there is a relationship of dependence between all of the factors that allow for the manifestation of a phenomenon. This is what we call dependent arising. According to Buddhism, this is all there is. Neither causes nor conditions, nor the effects that are produced, have reality. Phenomena appear based on the principle of dependent arising. And this is what will be explained in detail next, but not during this course. So concerning dependent arising, it's necessary to consider outer phenomena and inner phenomena. To begin, we'll look at a summarized presentation of inner and outer phenomena. We'll begin with the summarized presentation of outer phenomena. The root text reads, second paragraph, in this way, all outer phenomena are dependently arisen, just as a seedling appears from a seed, and so forth. Inner phenomena, the aggregates of higher, lower, and intermediate beings, appear according to the principle of 12 components of dependent arising. When we talk about other phenomena, inner phenomena concerns beings who live in the world. So whether they are higher beings, this refers to gods, whether they are lower beings, we also find this in the root text. So this is a reference to beings of the lower realms, or intermediate beings, which refers to humans. Inner phenomena refers to this: higher, lower, and intermediate beings. These beings are the result of 12 components. And each of these components is dependent on the other ones. And as we said earlier, this concerns a process of dependent arising, which cannot be produced if one or several of these elements are missing. Each element must be present. For a sentient being to manifest, these 12 components must be produced. If these 12 components are not present, a sentient being will not appear. A sentient being is therefore not a truly existing phenomenon. It is just the result of a process of dependent arising. And all of the steps that allow for the dependent arising of a sentient being are also dependent arising. They are dependent arising because they appear based on causes and conditions. I'll just go over this one more time. In order for a sentient being to manifest, there is a process of dependent arising in 12 steps, 12 components. Without this, a sentient being will not appear. Each of these 12 steps appears dependent on causes and conditions. Now, Khenpo will share an example. He will show us our relative vision of manifestation. Imagine that I have a seed, or you have a seed. We plant the seed in fertile soil and a young seedling appears. In the mind of an ordinary person, in other words, someone subject to ignorance and for whom there's no reflection and things are just produced, what appears to this person? The person thinks that they planted a seed and that a young seedling is born. They think that they have planted a truly existing seed, that there will be a stem that's truly existent. And this is simply what occurs in the mind of this person. In fact, this person is simply within a vision concerning the idea of causes and effects. But they don't know the idea of cause and effect on a subtle level. An ordinary person will never think about all the details of what's happening. Then Khenpo asks the question, as an ordinary being, we think that all of these things truly exist, but why? Why do these conceptual thoughts related to the true existence of things arise? And Khenpo takes another example to illustrate this. If you ask someone, is the house that you live in real? They will reply, well, of course, it's the house that I built. Of course, it's a real house. If we asked this question to someone who never thought through all of these details that have been explained, the person might think, wow, this person must be crazy to ask me this question. And Khenpo says, it's only in leading detailed analysis of the components of the house of a flower will we see that it's just the coming together of causes and conditions. If we reflect and carry out detailed analysis, we won't find the thing in question. It's not possible. What was just explained concerns a house, a flower, or even other things. This only concerns coming together of various factors. There is no real thing. We'll take a short silent break now. So we have concluded the summarized explanation. Now we come to the detailed explanation of the chapter on dependent arising. In this detailed explanation, we'll first find outer dependent arising, which will be explained in detail, and then inner dependent arising. The third section will be an explanation of the meaning of dependent arising that is common to or shared by these two. We'll begin with outer dependent arising. Here the root text says, how does this function? Outer dependent arising can be illustrated by the example of a seedling, etc., appearing from a seed according to the principle of the 7 causal links and 6 conditioning links. According to the perspective of perpetuation, it is taught that causal links, seed, seedling, leaves, stem, with its hollow core, bud, flower, and fruit, arise progressively. Each appears following the preceding one. These 6 conditioning links are earth, water, fire, wind, space, and time, which respectively allow for support, cohesion, ripening, expansion, opening, and progressive change. These conditions, which act in a concomitant manner, contribute to the appearance of the 6 causal links from the seedling to the fruit. Concerning outer phenomena, on the basis of 7 phenomena in relation with the cause and 6 phenomena in relation to the conditions, a fruit will appear. Concerning outer phenomena, the fruit will appear. The appearance of a fruit will manifest based on 7 phenomena that are causes and 6 phenomena that are conditions. The example that's given in the text is that of a seed. Imagine a barley seed. The person will sow this seed in their field. Once this barley seed has been sown, it will transform. It will disintegrate, and due to the seed's disintegration, the sprout will appear. In order for the seed to disintegrate, these 6 conditioning links are necessary. These 6 conditioning links are, first, soil, a place where the seed is planted. That will be a support. So we're talking about earth in this case. The earth within which we will plant the seed. It will be the support for the seed. Next, water is necessary. Water allows the seed not to burst or explode when it transforms. It allows for the elements to remain together as it transforms. Water's aspect of cohesion allows the seed not to burst or break open as it transforms. Then, in order for the seed to ripen, heat is necessary. This concerns the element of fire. In order for the seed to grow, air, oxygen, is necessary. This concerns the element wind that allows for expansion, growth of the seed. Even if these four elements are present, if they are not present in a balanced way, this will not be favorable for the destruction of the seed. If the capacity of the four elements is not balanced, the seed will die. If, for example, we give it too much water, the process that we wish for will not be produced and the seed will be destroyed. Things need to be balanced. If there's too much of something, water for example, then the process of the seed's disintegration will not be able to take place and the seed will be destroyed. On this subject, Khenpo quoted a sentence we find in Theravada Buddhism texts, which says, "What will happen if we plant a seed in the soil of a snowy mountain at very high altitude?" This seed will not transform into a plant because the four elements are not balanced. Furthermore, in addition to these four elements, a fifth element is required, that of space, emptiness, which allows for manifestation. In other words, there needs to be a space within which the seed can transform into a plant. And lastly, a certain amount of time is necessary to allow for this process of growth, progressive change. So that concerns the 6 conditions, which are earth, water, fire, air, space, and time. In order for a seedling to appear, a cause, the seed, is necessary, and the 6 conditions that we just saw. In other words, earth, water, fire, air, space, and time. Thus, 7 factors are necessary for the seedling to appear. The cause, which is the seed, and the 6 other factors. When these 7 different factors, these 6 conditioning links and the 1 causal link come together, the seed can grow and the following causal link appears, which is, in this case, the seedling. Now we will look at the 7 causal links. The first is the seed. Once the seed has germinated, thanks to the 6 conditions that are present, then the seedling will appear. Then the cotyledons. Concerning the seedling and the cotyledons, a group of causes and conditions are also necessary. For the cotyledons to appear, the causal link, which is the seedling, is necessary, as well as the conditions. Then the stem appears, then the bud, then the flower, and lastly the fruit. Fruit, in the case of a barley plant, is a barley seed. These 7 causal links are the seed, the seedling, the cotyledons, the stem, the bud, the flower, and the fruit. All of these different developmental steps are dependent on the 6 conditions listed earlier. In order for these developmental steps to take place, these 6 conditions need to be present simultaneously in order to act together. And these 6 conditions also need to be present at the same time as the cause. So we have 7 factors, 6 conditions, and the cause that need to occur at the same time, be present at the same time, for the following causal link to appear. If one of the 6 conditions is not present, then this process of development in 7 steps cannot occur. Thus, an accumulation of causes and conditions allows a barley plant to appear. Without this accumulation of causes and conditions, there would be no barley plant. These 6 conditions need to occur at the same time as the 7 developmental steps. We can't have 6 conditions the day before and the day after one of the 7 steps. The step and the 6 conditions need to occur at the same time for each causal link. For each causal link, the 6 conditions need to be present at the same time as the causal link in order for the following step of the causal links to appear. The same is true for a teepee. How about a tripod? A tripod requires... Oh, really? We're talking about a teepee with 3? Okay, fine. So a teepee has 3 supports that hold it in place, and then we place the animal skins on top of it. But if one of the three supports is not present, then we can't put a teepee up. There's no teepee that you can sleep in. The same is true for dependent arising of outer phenomena. All outer phenomena appear based on the coming together of causes and conditions. If all of the factors come together, the appearance of the thing is present. If this is not the case, if all of the factors are not present, do not come together, then the thing will not appear. Additionally, each of these causal links is itself the result of causes and conditions that allowed for it to appear. Whether it is the seedless seedling, etc., these causal links are also the result of causes and conditions that allowed them to appear. And the same is true for conditional links. The conditional links are themselves the result of causes and conditions that allowed them to appear. Thus, even causes and conditions are not real. They are also dependent on other causes and conditions. If we consider, for example, one of the 6 conditions, that of water, we can have a kind of a coarse perspective of water as we know it. There's also a subtle perspective, that of the element of water. Regardless of the perspective that we are considering, whether it is the coarse or the subtle perspective, water is the result of a series of causes and conditions. Thus, all phenomena, due to being dependent arising, are empty of reality. They are emptiness. We can never find any truly existing independent cause. Everything is the result of causes and conditions, even the causes and conditions, and so forth, infinitely. Nothing is independent. Everything is dependent on other causes and conditions. Thus, we find nothing independent. This is how we can understand that all phenomena are empty of reality, are emptiness. Now we'll look at the origin and the profundity of this teaching. The Buddha explained the details of all this in a sutra called the Rice Seedling Sutra. He uses the example of a rice seedling for the explanation. in order for the practitioner to be able to understand and know the emptiness of all things. At the time, the Buddha resided in Rajgir. The city was surrounded by rice fields, rice paddies. He used this example because it was very easy for the people who lived there, the people receiving the teaching, who heard it, to understand what the Buddha was explaining. Indeed, the people at the time who knew rice paddies well, who were familiar with the different steps of rice seedlings growth into a plant, they knew the conditions necessary for this development. You may recall, yesterday we talked about the Indian master Nagarjuna, who is very well known for his teachings that explain the nature of phenomena. He established reasonings that prove that all phenomena are emptiness. Among these reasonings, the most precious, the most profound, is the reasoning of dependent arising. Nagarjuna said, all objects of knowledge are unborn because they are the result of dependent arising. Khenpo comes back to this example with the seed and the seedling. He says that if we analyze, we'll see that the seed does not produce the seedling. It's simply the coming together of causes and conditions. If true birth exists, it must be present. The seed that was sown and becomes a seedling, as we said yesterday, can you put your finger on something that is the cause, that is the birth? Thus, we can only conclude that the phenomenon that we call the birth of something and that we imagine to be real never occurred. This birth does not exist. It's simply something we imagine. It is something conceptually constructed. Buddhist masters and Shakyamuni Buddha himself said that this is something we need to reflect on, that it's important to reflect on this. As you know, Buddha Shakyamuni said, do not simply accept what is said, but think about it in order to truly understand. The Buddha also said, the future disciples of my teaching must not simply accept what is said. They need to think about what I said and they need to understand it. Do not blindly follow what I have said. Each individual is endowed with intellect that allows them to think and to understand different things. Thus, use it. Each Buddhist practitioner needs to reach their own definitive understanding. Each of us needs to reach our own definitive understanding of the fact that things are unborn. Of course, having thought about what the teachings explain of this subject. If we do not do this, we cannot attain liberation from samsara. Khenpo Rinpoche adds that based on good conduct, having abandoned the 10 harmful activities and practicing the 10 virtuous actions, we can obtain a good rebirth as a human or a god. There will be a result, but we cannot attain liberation from samsara if we simply practice positive action. Practicing positive actions is good, but this alone is not enough to attain liberation from samsara. The path to enlightenment involves 5 steps. The path of accumulation, 5 steps, 5 paths. The path of accumulation, the path of junction, the path of seeing, the path of familiarization or meditation, and the path of no more learning. A person who is capable of progressing across the steps of the path of accumulation, the first of the 5 paths, does so based on the practice of beneficial action. But once they have reached the path of junction, the second path, they need to practice based on personal, definitive knowledge of the unborn nature of phenomena. Concerning, once again, the second path, the path of junction. The first path is the path of accumulation. The second path is the path of junction. On the path of accumulation, in order to progress, we do so based on beneficial action. Once we reach the path of junction, it's necessary to practice based on personal and definitive knowledge of the unborn nature of phenomena. Without this, no progress is possible. Khenpo says that definitive knowledge of what emptiness is the basis for familiarization with emptiness. It's the basis for familiarization with emptiness. Without this definitive knowledge of emptiness, we cannot familiarize ourselves with emptiness. Meditation is simply cultivating this definitive knowledge of emptiness. We will cultivate it again and again so that it develops until we reach a higher level of knowledge of emptiness. First, there is definitive knowledge. We familiarize ourselves with this. We cultivate it again and again until we reach a higher level of knowledge of emptiness. And due to this familiarization, at the end, eventually comes realization, which is direct knowledge of emptiness. That's what realization means, direct knowledge of emptiness. Khenpo says again, the only solely definitive knowledge of emptiness cannot lead to realization of emptiness. We need to cultivate this knowledge. We need to familiarize ourselves with this definitive knowledge so that it becomes more and more precise. Due to this familiarization, and due to it becoming more and more precise, eventually it will then become direct knowledge of emptiness. We will realize or attain direct knowledge of emptiness. Khenpo concludes by saying, consider what has been explained. Think about it in the context of emptiness, of outer phenomena, in relation to the 7 steps of development and the 6 conditions that must accompany this process of development. Okay. Are there questions? Where does the seed come from? As it was stated, the seed is the fruit. It's a cycle, in fact. The seed comes from this process, which has previously occurred. this process in 7 steps. The seed is the end of the process in 7 steps, and it's also the beginning of another cycle. But the beginning of the first one, there's no beginning in Buddhism, sorry. It's always a cycle. You mean like a primordial seed? No, there isn't one. Sorry. In Buddhism, there's always a cycle. There's always a seed that comes from a process in 7 steps, the fruit. We can never go back to an independently existing seed. The seed always comes from a previous cycle, infinitely. So earlier I was listening and I heard that the house isn't real and something else not real. And at the end, when you concluded the explanation, if I understood correctly, then I'll be able to understand this when I have sufficiently worked on it. I should be able to understand what you're talking about, that this house isn't real. And then, so there's that's one question. I should be able to understand it. And the other thing is, I don't know what a teepee is. So a teepee is like a type of tent. Okay, you got it. A teepee. But in fact, I wanted to share a question with you. We wanted to let you ask questions before we shared this with you in case you had them, but this actually connects to what you're saying. The question was, you explained that outer phenomena arise due to interdependence, and we can explain this based on these 7 steps. But we can't use this explanation for a mountain. So how can we explain outer phenomena such as a mountain? This example is not applicable to phenomena such as a mountain. However, a mountain is made up of components of matter, which are a collection of elements. The elements, water, earth, fire, and air, which are themselves the result of the coming together of causes and conditions. It's not the same process of development, says Khenpo, as in the example of the seed and the seedling, but there is likewise a process of development in the case of a mountain. In the beginning, causes and conditions are necessary for this universe to form. Thus, the beginning of the universe is a cause for there to be mountains in this universe later on. Perhaps, Khenpo says, there aren't 7 steps, as in the other process, but there are indeed developmental steps. Before this, in order for there to be the beginning of the universe, there needs to be a space, an empty space within which material substances can manifest. And then, gradually, over the course of millions of years, there is a process involving clouds with moisture the movement of these clouds gets faster and faster. As the movements accelerate, moisture becomes denser, and eventually solid matter appears. It's not exactly the same process as the development from a seed to a plant, but there is indeed a process of development present in the formation of a mountain, as in the formation of a house. Time for one more question. A quick question. Can you review the etymology of birth, the term birth in Buddhism, in order to be able to distinguish between birth and dependent arriving? Can you give a Buddhist description of what birth is? From a Buddhist point of view, there is no birth. There is neither appearance nor cessation. That's what's been explained. Okay, sure. But from an etymological point of view, I mean, if we say that there's no birth, there has to be a description of what birth is. But they say there's no birth because we believe in birth. It's in relation to our view, not in relation to their belief. And my question isn't about believing or not believing. We're talking about the fact that things appear from causes and conditions. I'm not questioning emptiness. I'm just trying to understand etymologically, when we say there's no birth in and of itself, then this birth has characteristics. If we're saying that there's no birth, this thing has to have characteristics. Yes, it's described in the chapter on the aggregates. Birth is among the conditioning phenomena non-associated by similarity with mind. It's related to the fact that a phenomenon appears, and then it will remain, then it will be impermanent and cease. So birth is the fact of a phenomena appearing. It wasn't there before, and then it appears. Here, what's being said is that there is no real birth. It's just dependent arising. We think that things truly are born, but what Nagarjuna showed is that there's no true birth. Okay, thank you. One last question. Thank you very much. Also, thanks for the question about the mountain, because I had the same question. So what I understand is that the causal links are different depending on the type of phenomena. Are the conditions the same, regardless of the phenomena? The 6 conditions that were listed in the case of the appearance of a seed, the dependent arising of the seed, are these the same, regardless of the phenomenon? Yes, at a certain point, that's what he said, that the 6 conditions are present in the development from a seed to a plant. I mean, up to each of us to reflect, but yeah, I mean, all of these things are necessary. Water, fire for things to ripen, air for things to get bigger, time for things to have progressive change. At a certain point, he said, these 6 conditions are present for the 7 steps. We'll conclude here. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say thanks also. And safe trip home. I'll see you soon.